Hello guys, welcome back to yet another fresh content video post. Today talking about why Donald Trump wants to defend the Robert E. Lee statue. Of course, Robert E. Lee, known as the best general the South ever had. May that be overrated and overstated? Sure, but that is what it is. Is he as overrated as Ulysses Grant? Hell no. He was way more, way better of a general than Ulysses Grant, and yet he became president. So, anyways, we're going to be covering this. This statement came out today or September 8th if you're watching tomorrow or the day after. So I'll just start off where he starts speaking or writing here. Trump says, just watched as a massive crane took down the most magnificent and very famous statue of Robert E. Lee on his horse in Richmond, Virginia. It has been long recognized as a beautiful piece of bronze sculpture. To add insult to injury, those who support this taking now plan to cut it into 3 pieces and throw this work of art into storage prior to the complete desecration. Next paragraph. Robert E. Lee is considered by many generals to be the greatest strategist of them all. President Lincoln wanted him to command the North, in which case the war would have been over in a day. Robert E. Lee instead chose to be on the other side because of his great love of Virginia, and except for Gettysburg, would have won the war, and he would be remembered as perhaps the greatest unifying force after the war was over. Ardent in his resolve to bring the North and South together through many means of reconciliation, exploring his soldiers to their duty and becoming good citizens of their country. Next paragraph. Our culture is being destroyed, and our heritage and history and our heritage, both good and bad, are being extinguished by the radical left, and we can't let this happen. If we only had Robert E. Lee to command our troops in Afghanistan, that a disaster wouldn't have happened. Ended in complete and total victory many years ago. What an embarrassment we are suffering because we don't have a genius like Robert E. Lee. Oh my fucking gosh. Oh my god, that is so based. What the fuck? Yo, yoba. Okay, jeez, bro. I would not expect for that to come out of his mouth. Oh my god. That is so interesting. So that's a lot more than I would say if I were president, which is just awesome because typically he's really reserved and you can even say borderline cucked on a lot of these racial issues, but he's really like, the left says dog whistles, but this is like very obvious to me. Like, okay, let's take this piece by piece. And again, I'm not criticizing him like, oh, he's racist. Like, who cares, bro? But anyways, so he's talking about how they're taking away the Robert E. Lee statue, which, if you remember, was the reason why Charlottesville happened, insofar as that was the pretext, right, to defend the left from taking it apart, I believe in 2017. So this was about 4 years ago. It was a whole shit show. Anyway, now if we move on to the second paragraph here, he's saying that Lee was considered by many generals to be the greatest strategist of them all, which is debatable. Obviously, he is a really high-ranking American general, and he's a Confederate, he's a traitor. Shut the fuck up, okay? He was American insofar as he's from the continental U.S. Okay, we'll just say that much. When you're talking about good generals, we're talking about people like Bradley. We're talking about Patton. We're talking about Pershing. We are talking about Washington, Lee, of course, Grant, several people, Stonewall Jackson, a lot of people that are important in history. So yes, Lee is on top, especially for Confederate generals, which are a subsection of the American people, I suppose, in terms of the founding stock and all that. Now, Lincoln wanted him to command the North, in which case the war would have been over in a day. I don't have no idea if that's true. I mean, obviously, Lincoln wanted the best people, right? He was a pragmatist. He said, if I had to, if it took freeing not a single slave in order to keep the Union, I would do so. And if I could free all of them to free the Union, I would do so. So with that quote or paraphrase, he was very pragmatic. So if they offered him, okay, here's a really good racist, slave-owning Confederate general to defect to your side, I think he would definitely take that. So even if that's not historically true, I think it is historically likely, in an alternate history, I think that is very likely to happen. Now, Robert E. Lee instead chose the other side because of his great love for Virginia, and except for Gettysburg, would have won the war. So, yes, it is true that Robert E. Lee and a lot of other Confederate politicians did choose to stick with the Confederacy because they saw it as a northern invasion and a defensive situation, okay? If you remember, the South didn't really invade the North, but was more so in defense at the very, very, very beginning. So I guess that is true. There's plenty of people that were conscripted into the army that otherwise wouldn't have fought for the Confederacy and uphold slavery, but they more or less had to defend anyway. So, I mean, you could say that about a good bulk of the people that were fighting for the Germans in the Second World War. A lot of people who were technically registered under the Ba'athist Party in 2003 were probably not wanting to defend Saddam Hussein, and yet they were forced more or less to do that. So, yes, that's important. Now, another point is that he said that except for Gettysburg, Robert E. Lee would have won. I mean, that is a very normie take. I mean, that's like to say, like, well, if Hitler won Stalingrad, then he would have won the war against the Russians, and I don't really think that would have been the case. Yeah, would it have been a lot closer? Yes, but definitely not. Given the trajectory and a lot of the nuances, would that have happened? Oh well, if the picket charge went this way, or if the third day went this way, and Lee were able to win Gettysburg and then swing around for Washington, they would have won the war. I mean, probably not, unless they were able to beat the Union within a matter of weeks to compensate for the logistical problems they had to overcome, from the West. So that just has to go, and a lot of people that are into the Civil War history would be like, well, god damn it, that son of a bitch wouldn't have won anyway. A bunch of people that, a bunch of rednecks would be like, LARPing, armchair generals are going to have a field day with what Trump's saying here. But for normies, I suppose, yes, Gettysburg was a big deal, so you can just easily say that would have won the war if it had gone another way. Obviously, it wouldn't have, in my opinion. But again, I'm not most people. He should be remembered as perhaps the greatest unifying force after the war was over, which I think is interesting, and it is kind of true. If you remember, the South had Lee Jackson Day for a long time, and so they used these Confederate people as sort of like a bridging between, the American North Yankee invasion force and the overall nation as, being composed of Confederates. So I guess sort of that Southerners definitely did see Lee as a person who was kind of high regard, and I guess theoretically that helped keep things together after the war was over in a very vague, esoteric zeitgeist. I can see that being true. And for the next thing, he says that he wanted reconciliation with the North, which is sort of true, and a lot of people did, and imploring his soldiers to do their duty and becoming good citizens of their country. So that was Lee after Appomattox or whatever, the Appomattox or Appomattox Treaty, whatever it was called. Basically, he was saying, okay, we lost, so be good citizens, right? So it goes to show, okay, Lee, yeah, you could call him a traitor, but ultimately he didn't want to sabotage the country after he lost the war. Okay, which is more than you can say for a lot of Confederates that were wishing ill. So yes, that is very good to point out. So he was a moderate. He was reasonable. He was moderate. He's reasonable. So he's basically like the Francisco Franco of the Confederacy. He's playing both sides. Okay, and you can see a novelty. You can see nobility in that somewhat, I guess. Our culture is being destroyed, and our history and heritage, both good and bad, are being extinguished by the radical left, which I find interesting. So he's basically hedging himself by saying, look, Robert E. Lee isn't perfect, but by getting rid of him, we're getting rid of everything, which is actually completely correct. And yes, it is a snowball effect. And Trump said, what, Lee first, okay, and then what, Lincoln, Washington, and he was fucking right. And I didn't really think about it that way 3 years ago, but it turned out to be true. So true, so true. People say, oh, Donald Trump was not a thought leader. I don't know, that's pretty insightful to me. If only we had Robert E. Lee to command our troops in Afghanistan, which is a very outrageous thing to say to a normie. Like, oh my god, he's so racist, he owned slaves, and he was the main leader of the Confederacy outside of the president, and you're saying that he should have commanded our troops in Afghanistan? And Trump says, you know what, actually, yes. And he'll cite the Harry Turtle Dove book of like AKs in the Confederacy to say like, you know what, he would know how to fight the Taliban, and you know what, yeah, I think he would. I think generally, I think that General Lee would have been very capable had he obviously been of this era. But I think given his IQ, given his experience and tactical skills, I would suggest that he would be able to easily beat the Taliban in our situation. Obviously, if he knew how to use technology of today, and obviously if he didn't age for 200 years straight. I mean, yeah. Anyways, and then that is pretty interesting as an alternate history. Robert E. Lee at the age of 250, fighting off the Taliban in 2015. Interesting. Anyways, we're moving on to the last part here. What an embarrassment we are suffering because we don't have the genius of Robert E. Lee. So again, very, very out there for him to say, and I think he's maybe trying to pander to the base, but this is pretty extreme. And again, I'm not saying it as somebody who's like liberal and like cringing at it. I'm just saying this is pretty novel. Like this is pretty awesome. It's like when the nerd like cusses the hell out of and roasts the bully. I'm like, okay, unexpected but kind of cool. Okay, this is sick. Um, the genius of Robert E. Lee. So he's saying, okay, we are sucking because we don't have Robert E. Lee. We don't have these old people. We don't have the founding fathers anymore. And that's a key point to make. And a lot of people, pussies, honestly. Dinesh D'Souza. Oh, Robert E. Lee would have been a Democrat. Oh my God, Adolf Hitler would have been a Democrat. Shut the fuck up. Okay? A lot of these people would have been Republican. A lot of these people would be better than what we have now as Democrats. Okay, so knock it off, people that are like, Democrats are the real racist. Okay, and so what? So what if we had a couple of these racist old people? Okay, Washington, Jefferson, a lot of these people would be running the country better than Joe Biden. Okay, so shut the hell up. And oh, he owned slaves. Okay, so what? That is not what we remember him for. Nobody cares that Robert E. Lee had slaves reasonably. It is he fought so and so battle well. The Battle of Antietam, right? The Battle of Gettysburg. The Manassas campaign, right? So come on, shut the hell up about he owned slaves. So what, man? Jesus. Oh, I like Winston Churchill, but he was an alcoholic and he smoked a lot and he was fat. Fuck off. That's not the point. You're missing the point. You are missing the point, bro. So knock it off. Anyways, cool statement from Donald Trump defending Robert E. Lee. I defend Robert E. Lee's statue as well. Was he a great man? Actually, yes, for his time. And, was he probably a little too racist? Yeah, sure, fine, fuck it. But, for 1860 standard, not really that. He was a moderate, so I'm not going to be hating on a guy. So, yeah. All right. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you comment down below what you think and see if you disagree. Anyways, bye.